what is community anyway? I'm going to discuss how community is defined and two foundational aspects of community that you can use to strengthen yours. How exactly do we define community? Well, some say that it is a social unit, and so that can be many different things. The social unit can share a geographical area, such as a neighborhood, or a city, or a state, or even a country. It can also have established norms, cultural norms per se, right? Such as religion, values, customs, or other practices or identities. So community is really contextual in terms of how you want to define your own community. Community can also be in virtual spaces, right? You may have some virtual communication platforms where you share communities. Community also ties to our sense of identity based on the practices that we do on a daily basis, the roles that we play in social institutions, right? This can be our family environment, our home, our work, within public spaces or in the government, society, or even humanity at large. So there's lots of different things in different communities where we can take part in. Communities are usually small relative to personal social ties, but also community may refer to large groups affiliations, right? As I mentioned, national or international communities. Some define community as a group or network of persons who are connected objectively to each other by relatively durable social relations that extend beyond immediate genealogical ties and who mutually define that relationship subjectively as an important part of their social identity and social practice. That's from Paul James when he is discussing sustainable communities. Other definitions include a unified body of individuals, right? People with common interests, particular area, common characteristics, interest in living together in a common society, a body of persons with common, especially personal interests scattered through a larger society, having common history, common social, economic, political interest, or common policies, right? So you can see here what the point I'm trying to get at is that community can be as big or as small as you would like to make it. And so we do play part in smaller communities, but we also play part in larger communities. And so I want us to really think about our role in these communities and what does it mean. As I mentioned, there are two foundational aspects to belonging in a community. And the first of which is that the community must have a reciprocal relationship, right? So if you think about what you are getting out of your community, and some of us might say we're getting a lot out of our community. Some say we might be getting a little bit out of our community. And what we really need to think about is this is often measured on how much we're putting into our community, right? So those who invest a lot into their communities tend to get more out of communities, right? And this is the same with any healthy relationships, right? If you think about your familial relationships, your work relationships, any other relationships that you may have, even friendships, right? If you're constantly giving and giving and giving and giving, and the other person is only receiving, right? It tends to create discord in the relationship, and it will do the same in our communities, right? So if you think about like the workplace, for example, if you're constantly giving and not feeling that you're receiving in return, like how that makes you feel as a worker. It also may contribute to your roles in society, right? If you're volunteering a lot or if your roles in a relationship, right? So it's important for us to consider those relationships within a community. So I ask you to think about what is your role in your community and what is the role of others within that community space? What does that reciprocity look like? What are you seeking from your community? What are you hoping to get out of it? Also, what elements are you bringing into your community? We often don't think about everything that we do in life is contributing to our community, right? If we have financial instability and we go to work, we often bring that with us to work in a really heavy backpack, right? Metaphorically. If we're having issues with our health, right? We bring that into maybe our familial community. If we're having a bad day, right? I always tell my students in class, it's really important for me to maintain my emotional equilibrium, because if I come into the classroom kind of storming around with a scowl on my face, being very direct, very cold, this is going to affect every one of my students in the classroom, and it's going to affect the climate in the classroom in terms of the way that we're able to have discussions, the way that we're able to break down phenomena, right? The way that we're going to grow in that space, right? So it's up to me to create that space, and it's up to you as well. We often don't think about how we're bringing in our relationships, our family, our job, even our hobbies and our habits, right? It kind of goes down to the fuel that we're putting into our bodies in the morning, right? If you think about not having that morning coffee and going to work, not getting enough sleep, not eating well, and kind of like what that does to your body. And that's the body that you bring into the community space. So really being reflective about that, because what happens to you also happens to your community. We all need to start with ourselves to be able to support others, right? So the second facet of a community, as I already mentioned, reciprocity. The second one is respect, right? And it goes with respecting ourselves. If we're respecting ourselves and loving ourselves and taking care of ourselves, we're able to put that into the community and respect other people. It goes to say also, if other members of our community aren't well, it does create insecurity and risk for us, right? So one really extreme example is that of crime and violence, right? So if everyone in our community doesn't feel safe and doesn't have basic necessities for survival, then our chances of having less security go up, right? We see anytime there's high levels of inequality, there's higher suggested spaces of robberies, right, of break-ins, of drug trafficking and other forms of violence. So that's just kind of on the larger scale of things. So it's really interesting to think about. Sometimes we talk negatively about ourselves, or we kind of don't think about, the things that we're putting into our bodies. We don't think about our routine. We don't think about some of the mundane day-to-day decisions that Pierre Bourdieu calls the habitus, right? So we don't think about those things that are occurring in our day-to-day because we feel like they only affect us, but they actually don't, right? They affect all of the members of all of the communities that we belong to. So it's really important to be kind to yourself for your community, if not for you, right? Remembering that happiness is a choice. Life is too short. Be sure to welcome every day with gratitude, with joy, with creativity, and compassion.